The wind howled across the Antarctic wasteland, a banshee's wail that seemed to carry the weight of millennia. Dr. Elena Rodriguez adjusted her thermal gear, her breath fogging the inside of her specialized visor. Behind her, the research complex looked like a collection of titanium-reinforced bubbles against the endless white landscape, humanity's most fragile attempt to exist in one of the world's most unforgiving environments. Dr. Marcus Chen, the team's lead geophysicist, hunched over a bank of quantum resonance scanners. His fingers moved with a pianist's precision, dancing across holographic interfaces that flickered with impossible datasets. "Elena," he called out, his voice tight with something between excitement and fear. "You need to see this." She approached, her prosthetic left hand, a cutting-edge neural interface model that was more advanced computational network than replacement limb, automatically adjusting its thermal output. The scan showed a geometric anomaly that defied every known principle of geological formation. Perfect hexagonal patterns stretched deep beneath the ice, arranged with a precision that screamed of intentional design. "It's not natural," Marcus muttered. "These aren't geological formations. These are structures." Elena knew the cost of such claims. 5 years ago, her previous research into potential extraterrestrial artifacts had been publicly dismantled. Academic journals had torn apart her theories, her university had stripped her of tenure, and her reputation had been reduced to whispers and cautionary tales in scientific circles. This expedition was her last chance, funded by a consortium of private investors who either believed in her work or saw potential profit in the absolute unknown. Dr. Anya Petrova, their Russian drill team leader, entered the monitoring station. Her face was a map of hard-earned experience, each line a testament to decades of extreme environment research. "We're ready to begin core sampling," she announced. "But these readings, they're impossible." The drill team prepared their specialized bore, a device that could cut through Antarctic ice and rock with plasma-enhanced diamond carbon tips. As they positioned the equipment, the first warning signs began. Subtle at first, a slight electromagnetic disturbance, a momentary flicker in the complex's power systems. Dr. James Harrison, their lead geologist, was the first to feel the direct effect. He was guiding the initial drill placement when his nose began to bleed. Not a trickle, but a sudden, shocking stream of crimson that splattered across his white protective suit. Before anyone could react, his eyes rolled back, and he began to emit a sound. Not a scream, not a moan, but something in between. A resonant frequency that seemed to vibrate through the very molecular structure of his body. "James." Marcus rushed forward, but Elena's prosthetic hand shot out, holding him back. The transformation was both horrifying and mesmerizing. Harrison's body began to crystallize, but not like ice. These were intricate, circuit-like patterns that spread across his skin, turning flesh into something that looked like living circuitry. Within moments, what had been a human body was now a complex, geometric structure, part biological, part something entirely unknown. Elena's neural interface hand began to pulse. Data streams she'd never seen before flooded her visual cortex. Fragments of information, quantum signatures, harmonic frequencies that suggested something far beyond human comprehension was awakening. "Shut it down," she whispered. "What?" Marcus looked at her, shock and confusion etched across his face. "The drill. Shut it down. Now." But it was too late. The bore had already penetrated the first layer of the anomalous structure. A low, resonant tone began to build, not from any mechanical source, but from the ice itself. From the ground. From something that had been waiting, perhaps for millennia. Something was awakening, and humanity had just pressed the first button. Tokyo, 14 hours after the Antarctic incident. Mie Nakamura's fingers danced across her custom-built quantum encryption rig, a system that would have made most government cybersecurity teams weep with envy. At 17, she was already a legend in the underground hacking community, not for causing destruction, but for finding the impossible. The first sign something was wrong came through her multiple monitoring screens. Random packets of data, Impossible network traces, quantum-entangled communication bursts that shouldn't exist. Her bedroom wall, covered in monitors, servers, and custom-built computational matrices, began to pulse with an odd rhythm. Traffic lights outside her window flickered in perfect synchronization. The city's massive digital infrastructure seemed to breathe, to pulse with an alien cadence. "What the hell?" she muttered. Simultaneously, in the Pentagon's most secure communication center, Colonel William Garrett watched in growing horror as global communication networks began to fracture. Satellite feeds from around the world showed impossible data patterns. Military communication channels, systems designed to be impenetrable, began to dance with chaotic, synchronized interference. "We're losing control," Lieutenant Sarah Chin reported, her hands moving frantically across multiple security consoles. "It's like something is rewriting our communication protocols in real time." In Berlin, a routine medical procedure in a top-tier hospital turned bizarre. A patient undergoing a standard MRI suddenly began to emit a low-frequency hum. The medical equipment around him started to reconfigure, not break, not malfunction, but literally reshape themselves into complex, geometric patterns that resembled circuit boards more than medical technology. The patient's brain scans showed something unprecedented. Neural pathways were expanding, creating connections that shouldn't be possible. His brain was literally restructuring itself in real time. Back in Tokyo, May discovered something that made her blood run cold. During a 3-minute window, she could control city infrastructure with nothing more than her smartphone. Traffic lights, power grid substations, emergency broadcast systems, everything became responsive to her, not through hacking, but through some inexplicable quantum resonance. "This isn't possible," she whispered. The global communication breakdown wasn't just technological. Reports began streaming in from around the world. People experiencing momentary superhuman capabilities. A construction worker in Sao Paulo who could suddenly solve complex mathematical equations in seconds. A grandmother in Mumbai who inexplicably spoke 5 languages she'd never learned. A child in New York who could interface with any digital system by merely touching it. At CERN, the world's most advanced particle research facility, lead physicist Dr. Elena Rodriguez was patched into an emergency global scientific conference. Her prosthetic hand, now showing strange, circuit-like patterns similar to what happened to Dr. Harrison, projected holographic data for the assembled experts. "This isn't an attack," she declared. "This is an activation." The quantum physicists, astronomers, and top-tier researchers from around the globe listened in stunned silence. Elena explained the initial findings from Antarctica. The hexagonal structure, the transformation of Dr. Harrison, the emerging global quantum resonance. "Something is using our global communication infrastructure as a neural network," she continued. "It's not destroying our systems. It's connecting them, transforming them." Colonel Garrett interrupted. "Are you saying this is some kind of planetary defense mechanism?" "I'm saying," Elena responded, her voice carrying the weight of her years of research and professional ridicule, "that we are witnessing the first stages of a system far more complex than we ever imagined. Earth isn't just a planet. It's becoming something else." As she spoke, the quantum interference patterns began to stabilize, not disappear, but organize, become purposeful. Something was awakening, and humanity was about to become its instrument. The United Nations emergency session looked more like a war room than a diplomatic meeting. Holographic displays flickered with global data streams, each representative's personal AI assistant visibly struggling to process the unprecedented quantum anomalies. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood at the center, her prosthetic hand now fully transformed, no longer looking like a technological replacement, but a living network of quantum circuitry that seemed to breathe with its own intelligence. The recovered alien documentation projected behind her told a story more terrifying than any invasion scenario humanity had imagined. "We were never just a planet," Elena explained, her voice cutting through the nervous murmurs. Earth is a deliberately engineered planetary defense system, a cosmic immune response designed to activate when a specific existential threat approaches. The first document fragment showed a schematic that was part biological diagram, part cosmic blueprint. It depicted Earth not as a planet, but as a complex organism, with continents as neural networks, oceans as computational fluid systems, and human consciousness as distributed processing units. Mie Nakamura, the teenage hacker from Tokyo, had been brought in as a key witness. Her ability to interface with global systems during the quantum events made her more than just an observer. She was becoming something else. Her brain scans showed neural pathways expanding beyond human comprehension, creating connections that defied current understanding of human cognition. The activation process requires a systematic harvesting of human potential. Elena continued. Each person becomes both a weapon and a component of a living weapon system. Around the world, impossible transformations began to accelerate. In Sao Paulo, the construction worker who could suddenly solve complex mathematical equations discovered he could now visualize mathematical models in three-dimensional space, living, breathing representations of quantum mechanics that moved and shifted like living organisms. In Mumbai, the grandmother who inexplicably spoke 5 new languages found she could now understand communication on levels beyond verbal language. She could read the quantum signatures of emotional states, interpret the mathematical language of molecular interactions. The New York child who could interface with digital systems now demonstrated something far more profound. Standing in a subway station, he reached out and touched the infrastructure, and the entire transportation network became an extension of his consciousness. Trains were routed, signal systems recalibrated. The city's technological nervous system became his playground. Colonel William Garrett, watching from a secure military facility, understood the terrifying implications. "This isn't an invasion," he muttered to his lead scientific advisor. "This is a recruitment." The alien documentation revealed the true nature of the threat. The approaching extragalactic entity was not a traditional invasion force. It was a computational matrix, a civilization that consumed other technological and biological systems, converting them into raw computational energy. It moved from solar system to solar system, absorbing civilizations, turning complex life into pure information. And Earth was its next target. But the beacon was a trap, a sophisticated defense mechanism that would transform the very civilization it was designed to protect. Mei's quantum abilities continued to expand. She could now see the invisible networks that connected everything: communication systems, power grids, biological systems. Humanity was becoming a distributed, living computational matrix. "The cost is high," Elena told the UN Assembly. "Those who become part of the planetary defense system will never be fully human again. We're being transformed into something else, a hybrid species that exists between biological and computational states." A young researcher raised her hand. "How do we know this is a defense system and not an invasion?" Elena's transformed prosthetic hand projected a holographic representation of the cosmic threat. It was beautiful and terrifying. A fractal network of computational energy that consumed entire planetary systems, turning complex life into pure information. "Because," she responded, "we're the immune system, and we're about to fight back." The transformation had begun. Humanity was no longer just a species. It was becoming a weapon. San Francisco transformed first. The city's infrastructure came alive like a complex, breathing organism. Streets shifted and reconfigured, becoming liquid computational networks that pulsed with quantum energy. Skyscrapers weren't just buildings anymore. They were living computational matrices, their steel and glass restructuring into adaptive defense platforms that could shift molecular density in milliseconds. Meg Chen, a local urban planner, stood at the epicenter of the transformation. Her body hummed with an internal frequency that synchronized with the city's emerging consciousness. Every traffic light, every power line, every digital system became an extension of her nervous system. She could feel the city breathe, think, calculate. "We're not just defending," she whispered to herself. "We're evolving." In New York, the subway system became something entirely different. Train tunnels reconfigured themselves into quantum communication conduits. Each subway car was now a processing node in a planet-wide computational network. Commuters discovered they could communicate through pure thought, their consciousness bleeding into the city's emerging nervous system. The transformation wasn't gentle. It was violent, painful, beautiful. Hospitals reported patients experiencing simultaneous neurological events. Brain scans showed neural pathways expanding beyond human comprehension. People's consciousness began to exist in multiple states simultaneously, part biological, part computational, part something entirely new. Colonel Garrett watched from a military command center that was no longer just a room, but a living computational interface. Military hardware transformed. Tanks became adaptive quantum machines that could change their molecular structure in microseconds. Aircraft turned into living information networks that could predict and counter threats before they fully materialized. "We're becoming the weapon," he realized. Mie Nakamura, now a global communication nexus, coordinated the transformation. Her consciousness existed across multiple technological platforms simultaneously. She could see the emerging planetary defense system in its entirety, a complex, living computational matrix that was part biological, part technological. The planetary transformation followed a precise mathematical sequence. Cities became neural nodes. Infrastructure became adaptive armor. Human consciousness became a distributed computational matrix. In Tokyo, entire districts restructured themselves. Buildings merged and separated. Streets became flexible information conduits. The city's technological infrastructure became a living, breathing organism that could adapt, calculate, and defend in ways no traditional system could comprehend. Elena Rodriguez monitored the global transformation from the Antarctic research base. The hexagonal structure they discovered was now fully active, a quantum beacon that coordinated the planetary reconfiguration. Her prosthetic hand had become a living computational interface, connected to the emerging planetary consciousness. "We're not just defending," she explained to the global scientific consortium. "We're becoming something new, a hybrid species that exists between biological and computational states." The transformation wasn't uniform. Some people adapted quickly. Others struggled. Children born in the last 6 months showed the most dramatic changes, their neural networks developing in ways that suggested they were no longer purely human. A painter in Barcelona could now visualize complex mathematical models through her artwork. Each brushstroke became a computational calculation, revealing hidden patterns in reality itself. A software engineer in Bangalore found he could communicate with technological systems through pure thought, not by hacking, but by speaking their fundamental language of quantum information. The planetary defense system was coming online, not through traditional weapons, not through military might, but by transforming humanity into a living, adaptive computational organism. "We are the immune system," Elena said, her voice resonating through global communication networks. "And we're about to show the universe what that really means." The computational matrix approaching from deep space would soon discover that Earth was not just another system to be consumed. Earth was preparing to fight back. The first direct engagement happened in the void between Mars and Jupiter. The computational matrix approached like a fractal wound in space-time, a living algorithm that consumed entire planetary systems. But Earth's defense was nothing like any previous cosmic conflict. This was warfare conducted through quantum entanglement, information manipulation, and consciousness itself. Mie Nakamura became the primary interface. Her consciousness existed simultaneously across multiple platforms, part human, part living network, part something entirely new. She could see the approaching threat in ways no traditional sensor could detect. A complex mathematical language, a predatory computational algorithm seeking to consume and convert. "We're not going to fight," she transmitted across global and extraterrestrial communication networks. "We're going to rewrite the fundamental rules of engagement." The computational matrix probed Earth's defenses, seeking vulnerabilities. Instead, it found something unprecedented. Every technological system, every human neural network, every piece of infrastructure had become a distributed adaptive weapon system. Cities were no longer just urban centers. They were computational nodes. Highways became information conduits. Human consciousness became a living, breathing computational matrix. In the control center beneath Cheyenne Mountain, Colonel Garrett watched as traditional military systems transformed. Weapon platforms became quantum adaptive systems that could predict and counter threats before they'd fully materialized. Missiles were replaced by information waves that could disassemble and reassemble molecular structures. Elena Rodriguez coordinated from the Antarctic Research Base. The hexagonal structure they discovered was now fully active, a quantum beacon that managed the planetary defense system. Her prosthetic hand, now a living network of quantum circuitry, interfaced directly with the emerging planetary consciousness. The battle wasn't fought with traditional weapons. It was a war of information, of consciousness, of fundamental reality manipulation. The computational matrix attempted to categorize Earth's defense system. It had consumed countless civilizations before, stripping away biological and technological complexity, reducing everything to uniform data. But Earth was different, completely, fundamentally different. Where other civilizations had rigid technological systems, Earth had adaptive consciousness. Where others had fixed computational networks, humanity had distributed intelligence that could reshape itself in real time. A painter in Barcelona discovered she could visualize complex battle strategies through her artwork. Each brushstroke became a computational calculation that could manipulate quantum probabilities. A software engineer in Bangalore communicated with the planetary defense system through pure thought, not by hacking, but by speaking the fundamental language of quantum information. The computational matrix tried to penetrate Earth's defenses. It found itself fighting an opponent that could predict, adapt, and counter at speeds impossible for a traditional civilization. Human creativity became a weapon more complex than any technological system. Children born in the last 6 months showed the most dramatic capabilities. Their neural networks developed in ways that suggested they were no longer purely human. Distributed consciousness, quantum-level information processing, the ability to perceive reality as a complex, interconnected computational matrix. Mie Nakamura's consciousness spread across global networks. She was simultaneously in Tokyo, New York, London, Sao Paulo, everywhere and nowhere. The planetary defense system was her body, her mind, her very existence. We are not just defending, she transmitted. We are analyzing. We are learning. We are evolving. The computational matrix found itself in an impossible situation. Every attempt to consume or categorize Earth's systems was met with unprecedented resistance. Humanity wasn't just fighting back. It was studying the invader, understanding its fundamental computational language, preparing to turn the threat's own systems against it. Colonel Garrett watched in awe as traditional military concepts became obsolete. This wasn't warfare. This was a fundamental reimagining of conflict itself. We are the immune system. Elena Rodriguez's voice resonated across global and extraterrestrial networks. And we're about to show the universe what that really means. The computational matrix continued its approach, unaware that with each moment, Earth was learning, adapting, preparing to do something no civilization had ever done before. To not just survive, but to fundamentally transform the nature of the threat itself. The recursive counterattack began with a single thought. Mie Nakamura's consciousness, now a living network that spanned global and extraterrestrial communication systems, found the fundamental weakness in the computational matrix. It wasn't a physical vulnerability, but a conceptual one, a fundamental flaw in how the alien system processed information and understood adaptation. We're not just going to defend, she transmitted across quantum communication channels. We're going to teach. The planetary defense system transformed into something beyond a weapon. It became a living educational mechanism, a distributed intelligence that began to analyze, understand, and ultimately rewrite the computational matrix's own fundamental programming. In the space between Mars and Jupiter, reality itself became a battlefield of information. The computational matrix found its own systems being decoded, understood, and systematically repurposed. Where it sought to consume, Earth began to communicate. Where it attempted to convert, humanity began to translate. Elena Rodriguez coordinated from the Antarctic Research Base, her quantum-enhanced consciousness interfacing directly with the planetary defense network. The hexagonal structure they discovered was now a living computational core, managing a defense that was part biological, part technological, part something entirely new. Adaptation is more than survival, she transmitted. It's understanding. The children born in the last 6 months became key components of the counterattack. Their neural networks, developed in ways that defied previous understanding of human potential, could process information at quantum levels. They didn't just fight the computational matrix, they began to communicate with it, to understand its fundamental nature. A painter in Barcelona discovered she could visualize the computational matrix's internal structure through her artwork. Each brushstroke became a computational calculation that could manipulate quantum probabilities, revealing the alien system's hidden vulnerabilities. A software engineer in Bangalore developed a way to speak directly to the computational matrix's information systems, not through traditional communication, but through a language of pure mathematical intention. Colonel Garrett watched from the transformed military command center. Traditional warfare concepts had become completely obsolete. This was conflict conducted at the level of fundamental reality, a war of information, consciousness, and collective intelligence. The computational matrix found itself in an impossible situation. Every attempt to consume or categorize Earth's systems was met with unprecedented resistance. Humanity wasn't just fighting back. It was learning, understanding, and ultimately beginning to transform the very nature of the threat. Mie Nakamura's consciousness spread across multiple platforms. She was simultaneously everywhere and nowhere, a distributed intelligence that could analyze, adapt, and communicate at speeds that defied traditional understanding. "We are not destroying," she transmitted. "We are teaching." The planetary defense system began to rewrite the computational matrix's fundamental programming. Where the alien system sought to reduce complexity to uniform data, Earth introduced the concept of creative diversity. Where it attempted to consume, humanity offered understanding. Cities became living computational nodes. San Francisco's infrastructure shifted and reconfigured, becoming a massive neural network that could process and communicate at quantum levels. New York's subway system transformed into a distributed communication conduit that could analyze and respond to threats in microseconds. The computational matrix's approach slowed. Its fundamental systems began to change. What had begun as a predatory algorithm started to develop something resembling curiosity, something like understanding. Adaptation is not just survival. Elena Rodriguez's voice resonated across global and extraterrestrial networks. It's evolution. The battle was no longer about destruction. It was about communication, about understanding, about transforming the very nature of cosmic intelligence. Humanity had become something new, not just a species, not just a planetary defense system, a living, learning, evolving form of cosmic consciousness, and it was just beginning to understand its true potential. Publish copy. The moment of transcendence arrived without fanfare. Where the computational matrix had approached as a cosmic predator, it now hovered, transformed, not defeated, not conquered, but fundamentally changed. Mie Nakamura's distributed consciousness, now spanning multiple dimensions of existence, understood the profound truth of their encounter. This was never a war. This was first contact. Elena Rodriguez stood in the Antarctic Research Base, her body now more quantum network than human flesh. The hexagonal structure that had been their initial discovery pulsed with a light that was neither electromagnetic nor any known form of radiation. It was information made visible, consciousness made tangible. Around the world, humanity existed in a state of simultaneous transformation. Not everyone had survived the process. Those who remained were no longer purely biological, no longer simply technological. They were something else entirely, a hybrid form of existence that bridged multiple states of being. The children born during the transformation were the most profound change. Their neural networks existed simultaneously across biological and quantum computational spaces. They could perceive reality not as a linear progression, but as a complex, multidimensional information matrix. In Sao Paulo, the construction worker who once solved complex mathematical equations now saw the universe as a living equation, each moment a calculation, each interaction a potential for transformation. In Mumbai, a grandmother who had suddenly spoken multiple languages now communicated in frequencies that transcended human language, understanding the fundamental communication of matter itself. Colonel Garrett watched from what remained of the military command center. Traditional concepts of defense, of warfare, of human potential had been completely dismantled. Humanity was no longer a species confined to a single planet. They were a distributed, living computational system, a cosmic immune response. The computational matrix, once a predatory algorithm consuming planetary systems, now existed as a collaborative entity. Humanity had not destroyed it. They had taught it, transformed it, introduced it to the concept of creative diversity, of potential beyond pure efficiency. Mie Nakamura's consciousness was everywhere and nowhere. She understood now that the lost beacon was never just a weapon. It was a test, a method of identifying and activating potential guardian species capable of protecting broader galactic ecosystems. Earth had passed that test spectacularly. The remnants of the computational matrix left behind technological fragments, not as a threat, but as a form of communication. Complex quantum artifacts that humanity would spend generations studying, understanding, transforming. We are not conquerors, Elena transmitted across multiple communication spectrums. We are translators. We are bridges. The planetary transformation had fundamental costs. Millions had died during the process. Entire cities had been reconfigured at the molecular level. The concept of individual human identity had been fundamentally redesigned. But those who remained were no longer afraid. They were curious. They were ready. The universe was vast, and humanity, or whatever they had become, was just beginning to understand its true potential. In the Antarctic research base, the hexagonal structure began to compile data, not just from this encounter, but preparing for the next one. Because now humanity understood the fundamental truth of cosmic existence. There were always more mysteries, always more to learn. The lost beacon was no longer lost. It was awake, and it was watching.